And I remember going to the meeting with Josh and Benny. And Josh was like, okay, listen, I have this idea of the opening of the movie. So it's like these guys holding this gemstone, and then the camera goes into the gemstone, and then it's traveling inside the gemstone. And then at some point it becomes, the colon, and it becomes a colonoscopy, and then the camera comes out of the monitor of the colonoscopy.
You're like, you had me a colonoscopy.
And the moment I heard all this, I said, I really want to work on this movie.
Yeah.
Welcome to another CG garage where the monstrous moon shines. We're building new Hollywood like in 1971's prime. From auteur's bold dreams to AI's fever dream, where tech meets the silver or LED screen. Pixels and passion are pipelines unknown to host one show on a deadline postponed.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the CG Garage. This is episode number 532, featuring Eran Dinur, who is the VFX supervisor for the movie Marty Supreme, a fantastic movie that Daniel and I absolutely adored. We adored it so much, we're probably going to create another episode where we just talk about the movie, don't even talk about anything else, because we absolutely love this film. So be on the lookout for that. But for this one, we're talking about the visual effects that was done and Eran's work in this. Eran came to visual effects almost by accident, the way he describes it, but through his pure passion and dedication, and quickly climbing the ranks and becoming a great VFX supervisor and working on movies like this. He's one of the guys who sort of champions invisible visual effects, and that is definitely something that is true in movies like Marty Supreme. He first started working with the Safdie brothers on Uncut Gems, and then later worked with Josh Safdie on Marty Supreme, which had over 500 visual effects shots. So there are quite a bit of them, and like I said, most people don't even realize it. That's the whole point of invisible visual effects. Okay, I do want to make a couple of quick announcements. If you guys haven't seen it, there's an article that came out about something that we have done over at Monstrous Moonshine called VidViz, and we are very excited about it, and it is out. Carolyn Giordina wrote something about it, and it is essentially a new way that we're looking at doing previs with live actors on a blue screen. So it was kind of an interesting methodology, and it really leads to a lot of interesting things. This leads me to some events that are happening on January 27th and the 28th. So next week, as of this podcast coming out, it'll be the week after that. There's going to be the Production Summit, which is productionsummitla.com. Just go to productionsummitla.com, and that will lead you there. And if you use the code CHAOSGUEST, you will get a 100% discount. Yes, you will get essentially a free ticket to the Production Summit. Of course, you have to submit to get an entry, but go ahead and do that. At least you'll be able to do it for free if possible, which will be really cool. So definitely go ahead and do that. Again, the discount code is CHAOSGUEST, all one word. I will also be at the HPA retreat. I am not talking there. I'm just going to go attend. But if you guys happen to be at the HPA retreat, which is going to be February 15th through the 19th, I would love to see you. So just make sure and say hi. I might even bring some podcast gear just in case there's someone who wants to record a podcast with me. Okay, a couple of other things about the podcast. As you guys know, you can just go to cggarage.com to follow the podcast. You can also go to our YouTube page, which is now live. We're starting to put all the videos up. It is at CG Garage Podcast is our YouTube. So youtube.com/@CG Garage Podcast. And of course, if you want to join our Discord is cggarage.com/Discord, and that will redirect you to our Discord. If you have any questions or suggestions of the podcast, of course, you can always email us, podcast@cggarage.com, podcast@cggarage.com. But for now, please enjoy episode number 532 with Eran Dinur.
This episode of CG Garage is sponsored by CenterGrid Virtual Studio. Wondering why you went to film school just to be stuck managing hardware life cycles? CenterGrid delivers end-to-end GPU-accelerated cloud workstations built specifically for VFX and creative production, with flat, predictable pricing and personalized support from people who actually get your workflow. Plus, CenterGrid is TPN Gold Shield certified, so your studio's security is locked down. Check out what Virtual Studio can do for your pipeline at cgvirtualstudio.com. This episode of CG Garage is sponsored by Kitbash 3D, one of our favorite tools and an essential tool for 3D artists everywhere. With the largest library of cinematic quality, production-ready 3D assets, Kitbash 3D ensures that your studio has the tools to build stunning environments quickly, efficiently, and at scale. Design detailed worlds in a fraction of the time without compromising on quality. Head to kitbash3d.com and use the code CGGarage at checkout for 10% off any kit. Again, that's kitbash3d.com, code CGGarage.
Thank you, Eran, so much for doing this. This is really amazing. I will tell you that from experience that Daniel and I are huge fans of the projects you've worked on in terms of, just them as movies and as stories.
Absolutely.
So we're very, very excited to talk to you about your experiences of working on those. But I did look a little into what you've done, and you come from a very interesting background and a very interesting different background. I'd love for our audience to know a little bit more about how you got involved in what you do in visual effects, but I know you started with music. Is that correct? You were a musician from what I remember.
Yeah, and yes, and when I started with music, I never thought this will not end with music.
Right.
That visual effects was a far away thing, totally not on my mind. Yeah, I was a musician. I studied music. I studied classical music, composition, and I worked mostly as a composer for a theater. I wrote music for theater. I also wrote some other music, mostly in more classical world. But I also played as a keyboard player in rock bands, and I did a whole bunch of things as a musician. I had a career mostly focused on theater, writing music for theater for about 15 years, I think.
Yeah.
And it was a good one. But at some point, I started being interested in, let's say, CG first.
Okay.
And it was a completely random start. Like I just got a computer for music. It was a new thing. I think it was not like 98 or 97 where I got my first computer.
Right.
And I was just so excited about the whole idea of computer that I used to download all kinds of demos of software. And by mistake, I downloaded something called TrueSpace.
Oh, yeah.
Which I don't know if you remember. Back then it was exciting. I didn't know what it does. I looked at their demos and immediately, I don't know, I got hooked and I started teaching myself CG, 3D Studio Max then, and Maya, and eventually because I love landscapes and I love landscape photography, and I can call myself a mountain person. I love anything that has to do with mountains and landscapes. I discovered this then pretty new software called Vue. Back then it was called Vue d'Esprit in French. And that specialized in creating landscapes in CG. And I really loved working with it. And then I started putting up, my work on different forums and like galleries, online galleries. And at some point, the company that makes Vue, that they were in Paris, they asked me if I want to work for them to help them create content and so forth. So I created a lot of the content that they had on the DVDs of the software, because software back then still came with DVDs, in a box.
And manuals, like huge manuals.
Actual physical objects.
And as it turns out, I wasn't aware of it back then, but ILM just worked on Pirates of the Caribbean back then, and their matte painting department started using Vue. Because Vue just came up with I'd say one of the first scattering systems, which was a big thing back then. The ability to scatter, millions of plants or trees over a terrain and like see proxies of them in the display. And so I guess they started using the software and they studied the scenes that I've created. And then they decided to bring me to their new establishment. They just opened a branch in Singapore, which was, of course, much easier to bring people from all over the world than it would be to bring over to California, to the main ILM hub. So they emailed me out of the blue and asked if I want to join as an artist. And for me, it was a dream come true. I was dreaming about working professionally in visual effects. So I convinced my wife to make the move, which wasn't easy, of course. So we had 2 little children, and we moved to Singapore. And I started working at ILM from Israel, from Tel Aviv. And I was there. They brought me as a senior artist just because I negotiated the pay for them, and I was senior mostly in age, not as much in experience. Most of the people were a lot younger than me. I was 40 back then, and with 2 kids already. But it was an amazing school for someone starting in visual effects to work at ILM. I think that a lot of the things that I still apply today, as far as like supervising and what to look at, I learned from the supervisors there.
Right.
And I did a whole bunch of things. I did some CG. I mean, they brought me as a view expert.
Yeah.
And pretty much by the time I got there, the team has changed at ILM. The person who brought me over was replaced by someone else, and then they decided they don't want to use Vue in their pipeline. So then I started I did some CG, some modeling for games, and eventually landed on compositing, and that was my school for compositing. And I had great teachers, and I think I owe them a lot. And then we decided to move to New York, mainly for my wife's doctorate, not related to VFX. And here in New York, I worked at a smaller company that did a lot of, let's say, mid-range or mid-budget movies. And it was a combination of a bit of luck and just how things happened. Ended up being the supervisor there, and stayed there for about 10 years working as a supervisor. And that's where a lot of the movies I worked on, I worked as part of Brainstorm Digital.
Right.
So I the whole thing, I had to learn fast and move fast to kind of catch up on the lost time. But it was an interesting switch.
Well, it seems like the switch you made from being a musician to being a CG artist, like you had, like that set the stage to be able to make these transitions that you needed to make throughout everything else. Because these are like, wait, you go in just to do view stuff, and then they're like, well, no, we're not going to use that anymore. And then you do have to sort of reconfigure what your life is. And you're like, well, I did move to Singapore to use Vue, so maybe I need to figure out a new tool. And I think that, like, from your for the audience's sake, Eran has worked on Ad Astra, Uncut Gems, and recently Marty Supreme, and some of this beautiful work I've seen in many, many years. And I think that Chris would agree with me that great VFX supervisors are people that have the ability to shift between what is needed because they see the art overall rather than the individual tool.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, a VFX supervisor in the end is a bit of a director or director of visual effects, but also a little bit of a manager, a little bit of a firefighter putting out fires, like happens a lot in production. But also a sort of a bridge, between the filmmakers and the on-set part and the artists, because these are such different worlds and they speak such a different language.
Right.
And, most of the movies I worked on are movies where the visual effects are what you may call invisible or supporting visual effects. They're not visual effects that are supposed to stand out to the eye and declare that they're there, as opposed to, the big kind of tentpole movies that you go to, in a way, you go to watch the visual effects too. Like you go to,
see Avatar or whatever.
Avatar or anything like that. Sure. I mean, I look, the thing that really want to make me work in visual effects was actually the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yep.
even though these are, let's say, these are fantasy dramas, but of course, they have a vast amount of visual effects there. And I think that just the environments, just because I love mountains and landscapes, and these were more kind of integrated visual effects that maybe are not like the huge crowd simulations of the fights that they kind of in many ways pioneered there and on the work on the movie. But to me, they were the most amazing, that integration of real beautiful landscapes of New Zealand and the additional matte paintings or CG that was added to this. So yeah, and I think also as a supervisor, you need to find a way to work with different directors. And I think I was lucky enough to have that experience because I worked for quite a few years in the theater, and it's a different type of collaboration. So there I wrote music, here I'm in charge of VFX, but you still have to understand the director, understand what they want, and be able to collaborate with them. So I think that helped me probably getting into that role of VFX supervisor.
Yeah.
Well, when Chris first talked about you coming on the show, like I've seen Marty Supreme, and I was like, what do we talk to him about? Because I don't know what the visual effects were.
Which we will get to, definitely, for sure. But, the thing is, I think that, this is your work as a whole, right, is such a fantastic example of the fact that visual effects is in everything and no one realizes it,
And no one realizes it.
No one
yes.
realizes it. I was just
Exactly.
looking at your work. That I saw the demo you did for The Greatest Showman. You worked on that one. And it was like,
Yes.
there's so much of that. Like, oh, of course they had to replace the ground. Of course they had to change the seasons of the trees. Of course they had to make and no one realizes all of that was done in post. And it's just so fun. And of course, Boardwalk Empire was a fantastic show that you guys worked on. And so, and you got a lot of awards for that. But I think that people don't really realize that. And it's just wonderful to see. It's just really, really great to see. And I think the one that I remember, this is not particularly your work, but it was something that resonated with me, was during the Life of Pi days when everyone was still putting green on their backgrounds and sort of, standing in solidarity of visual effects. And some people were saying, it's like, I don't like movies with visual effects. I like real movies that don't use visual effects, like Lincoln. And
CG ruins movies.
And then someone showed a picture of background of Lincoln with a giant green screen behind him. It's like, well, what did he think was behind him? And it's just the thing that people don't realize how much visual effects is used in movies.
Well, it's like when you bring up Lord of the Rings, I recently saw all the extended editions in the theater again, and I hadn't seen them in a few years. And it was overwhelming. I forgot how overwhelming these movies really are emotionally. Like they're just phenomenal. And some of the effects are dated, some of the whatever it is. But the what convinces me about the movie is that everything is there to tell the story. Like, it's not there to show off. It's not there to be separate and say, like, look, we can do this kind of special effect you've never seen before. It's there in support of this greater, grander emotional vision. And that's why people love these things. They don't think of those as CG movies, for instance, And when you see it, like I'm a huge fan, actually, of Ad Astra. I think that's an incredibly beautiful, the visuals are incredibly beautiful. The movie's incredibly beautiful. And it's this kind of poetry that you rarely get to see on the big screen. And you don't think of what you're seeing as like how it's done. Like I'm aware that we don't have spaceships like this. Like, it's not like I don't know that it's not real, or I don't know that it's CG. It's just that I'm in the movie and I'm forgetting about all that stuff. And to take it down to the real world element, and something like Marty Supreme, like it's the kind of thing where people are most likely to forget any kind of visual effect because they just accept these things as reality. When actually Marty Supreme, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, like that is actually creating an entire world that does not exist because it is not the 1950s. Timothy Chalamet, isn't that great at ping pong.
I mean, we'd love to hear. Obviously, we have we're also big Safdie fans as well. But tell us a little bit, like, how did you get involved in these projects? Including Uncut Gems as well. Like, what was your stuff that got you involved with them?
Well, yeah, Uncut Gems was the first movie I did with Josh. That was Josh and Benny. And that was when I worked at Brainstorm Digital and was their main VFX supervisor. And I remember the first meeting. So they said, "Oh, there is this duo directors that are making these new movies." And I knew the producer too. We've worked with him before. The same Anthony Katagas, who also produced Marty Supreme. And I remember going to the meeting with Josh and Benny. And Josh was like, "Okay, listen, I have this idea of the opening of the movie. So it's like these guys holding this gemstone, and then the camera goes into the gemstone, and then it's traveling inside the gemstone. And then at some point it becomes, the colon, and it becomes a colonoscopy. And then the camera comes out of the monitor of the colonoscopy.
You're like, you have made a colonoscopy. Sounds great."
And the moment I heard all this, I said, I really want to work on this movie.
Oh, yeah.
I got to tell you a real quick story. I was about to have a colonoscopy myself.
That's what this show's really about.
And I like to, I'm a joking kind of guy, so I'm making jokes. So I'm sitting there, and they're about to put me under to go to take my colonoscopy. And I was joking. I was like, "Oh yeah, I watched Bridesmaids to inspire me for this." I was joking about all that. And then the nurse is like, Uncut Gems starts off with a colonoscopy. And I turned around and I was like, "You saw Uncut Gems?" And just as that, I fell asleep, and I don't remember it. The rest of the
conversation has yet to continue.
The conversation ended at that point. I was like, wait a minute. I have more questions. And I was like,
That's a good story. Listen, the only real part of that whole sequence that we worked on was the colonoscopy.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Because that was actual footage, real footage of colonoscopy. So, the work on that movie was mainly the opening and ending sequences, and the end, when he gets shot. I hope, spoilers, it's
Yes.
The movie has been there for a while. I can say the camera comes close to the bullet hole in his head and then goes inside and then does the same or similar travel through the gem. And it was a fascinating, thing to work on, because what does it look like inside a gem? What does it look like imagining a camera going inside the gem? And then how do you connect a real camera from a real shoot, pushing in on a gem to a virtual camera going inside a CG world? And then how do you connect eventually that world of the gem through a virtual camera to a real camera in a colonoscopy? So that was technically challenging, but it was a very creative work, and I really enjoyed it. And Josh is a very creative and very visual person. So even though it was Josh and Benny, he was mostly working with me on those.
He had this vision in his mind.
The start,
I don't think just a little real quick for the listeners. I don't think most people realize that Josh and Benny's Safdie's grandfather is Moshe Safdie, one of the world's most famous architects.
I was
uncle.
Uncle.
Okay,
that's really wild.
Moshe Safdie is a very known architect, and he built like the Marina Bay hotel in Singapore and a lot. I mean, I talked to Josh a little about it. He told me about him. They really admire him. It's a
I'm just putting the visual connection here that are important. Yeah.
And I think so. Yeah, he is, but he's not just visual, Josh. I mean, if you watch his movies, you can see it very clearly. There is almost an assault on all the senses. It's music to it, sound. He's really into all these things. I know that when he works with Daniel on the music, he also he told me he plays some of the things himself on the keyboard.
Wow.
So, so that was Uncut Gems, but there wasn't a lot in the movie itself. It was mostly these. Marty Supreme was a completely different story because, yeah, you're right. Maybe you don't really feel the visual effects there, but there's over 500 shots of visual effects in the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
And what we knew that there's going to be some period stuff, locations. We knew that we're going to shoot in New York City, and obviously, things need to be changed to work with 1950s. But I think from the beginning we knew that the biggest challenge would be crowds because we're doing this huge ping pong, the World Championship at Wembley, which we shot at Meadowlands in New Jersey. And that's a huge arena. And even though the production they closed the top part of it, it was still about 5,000 seats. And, we had to work with about 200 extras plus minus. And some days we had a little more, maybe 250. So obviously, having a huge amount of extras is extremely expensive for production because you have to feed them, to transport them, to dress them, to do hair and makeup for each one of, especially since it's a period movie and they can't just bring clothes from home. So that was a realization that there'll be some really tricky crowd, and indeed that was probably the most challenging and biggest part because especially the Japan game, the final game in Japan, because we shot it in an open air amphitheater in Tokyo. We had about 200 Japanese extras. They were dressed in everything that was so colorful. I think that when you have to match this detail and color, these kimonos, and just think about people wearing kimonos inside a crowd simulations and the interaction of the cloth,
the interpenetration between everything,
and penetration. And just creating this variety we scanned about 30 extras. And the kids there and old people, and it was such a diverse crowd. And also the crowd is a real actor in the final game. They react very strongly. They shout, they get up. So I think that was very challenging. And I think we were very lucky to work with, great vendors, great companies that helped us create this. Mainly, we worked with 3 companies: Folks in Toronto, El Ranchito in Madrid, and the Artery in New York. And they did only the opening sequence because we had an opening sequence here too. This is another story, but they focused on that. But most of the crowds were done at Folks, and they did an amazing work. I think that at some point we realize how complex it is to do the crowd, both at the Wembley scenes, but especially in Japan.
It's one thing when you're doing like a million orcs coming over a hill, and they can all just be wearing armor. It's fine.
Well, I wouldn't say this is easy at all, but first of all, you have to remember that, we're not working with Weta or ILM, and we definitely don't have the kind of budget on these kind of movies that...
Well, it's the thing because with a movie like this, I think that people don't recognize that the closer things are to reality, the harder it is to overcome, because we are much more sensitive in our everyday as to what looks artificial. When you're doing orcs, you can get away with a lot because no one knows what an orc looks like.
I absolutely agree with that. I think that's a really important point, because a movie like this, photorealism becomes imperative. Like it has to integrate.
Right.
You cannot allow yourself for any element to jump out. Whereas in a fantasy movie or science fiction movie, there is a certain acceptance to the fact. It's not that these can just be, you can just throw anything. Not at all. I think that the idea of everything needs to still feel like it's in camera, even if you're doing aliens and spaceships. So but you're right that in this kind of movies, it really has to be hidden. So integrating, for example, the crowds in the atmosphere at the Wembley scenes was not easy because Darius, and I worked with Darius on quite a few movies already.
This is Darius Khondji,
Darius Khondji, the DP. He's an amazing DP. He likes
shot Fight Club, etc.
Yes.
Or 7, yeah.
He's a fantastic DP, and I know that he likes to use a lot of atmosphere. This is something that, because working with him before in other movies, like we did the other James Gray movies too, the Lost City of Z and The Immigrant, which is...
Oh, and my apologies, he didn't shoot Fight Club. That was Chrono. But go ahead. Yes, The Lost City of Z is gorgeous. Absolutely fantastic.
His movies are gorgeous, and Marty Supreme too. And he shot Uncut Gems too. But, there's all this atmosphere that you have to integrate your crowd in there. And depending on where each person in that CG crowd sits, there's going to be differing levels of atmosphere, and different lighting. So there is a lot of work involved. I think these folks and El Ranchito did an amazing job on that. But there were definitely obstacles to go through. So that's the crowds. And then you mentioned the ping pong. We knew that we're going to have to do some CG balls. We didn't know to which extent until we started shooting. Timmy Chalamet practiced for several years, and he practiced with a ping pong coach, Diego Schaff, his name, and his wife Wei. They're both training specifically for movies. They are, I think, a unique pair, or they have a unique expertise of doing ping pong for film. So
I wouldn't have thought there was such a demand for ping pong in film, but I guess it's a growing concern.
No, but if there's not a lot of people that can do that.
That's right.
It's a very niche specialty. But they have acquired this understanding exactly of how things look in camera in terms of ping
visually.
pong.
Yeah.
So they practiced every shot. Him and Koto, the Japanese guy who plays his nemesis, who's not an actor. He's actually a professional table tennis player.
Interesting.
Who's doing amazing acting, I think. He doesn't say a word.
It's great, though. Really great.
In the movie.
They are very, I mean, obviously, I love the fact that there's so many non-actors in this movie.
Oh, it's part of the style.
It's part of their genre, It's like, we've got, Tyler the Creator is in it, and Penn Jillette is in it, and obviously Kevin O'Leary, who is he plays a much bigger role than I expected, like a major role.
Yeah, it's an important.
Yeah. And Josh Safdie is uniquely good at getting non-actors to be as good as real actors. He folds them into the texture of the movie. I
totally agree. And Koto's selection was, I think, great. Choosing him specifically to play that part.
Yeah.
They practiced together a lot, and they practiced each point like a choreography, like knowing exactly where you hit the ball, whether it's top spin, under spin, which side. Is it a smash? Is it a lob? And so they came super prepared. But the reality was that the ping pong ball is such a small thing. Even professional players, Olympic champions, would have a really hard time playing a certain choreography and sending the ball exactly to where it needs to land, without missing, without hitting the net, without going outside the table. So we may have been able to do a lot of these in reality, but it would take so many takes that it's just impractical. We would never finish shooting the movie, and I think Josh understood it, and Timmy too, even though he wanted to do it for real. So there were some shots that they did for real, but many of the shots of the more complex shots in the game, they played without a ball, and we had to add a ball in there.
But they knew what they needed to do, right? So they rehearsed it over and over again, and then they played without the ball, right?
And if they wouldn't have done it extremely well, it would be impossible for us to put the ball, because it's
did you just add the ball, or did you actually do corrections to paddles and strikes and timing and all the other stuff?
Well, luckily for us, sometimes we had to retime an actor to hit at the right time, but we didn't need to do as much as we thought we would.
Awesome.
Especially with Timmy and Koto, because they were both great at it. I mean, Timmy is also a musician, so he has this musicality, this ability to feel the timing.
Yes.
And they did a fantastic job, which helped us a lot. And also I had Diego help me sometimes identify the exact frame where the hit would be, which is really hard because everything is very, very fast. Of course, sometimes we had to find solutions because if a hit is just 1 or 2 frames later than it should be, the ball is already going to feel too slow. And then you have to find a solution, maybe make a higher arch, maybe send it farther away to the table. So to me, the working with the animators of El Ranchito and folks really was like directing an animation movie where the ball is a character.
Right.
And giving notes is like, okay, here, lower the ball. It should hit the table at this frame, not this frame. And everything was, of course, keyframe animated because there is no way to simulate any of it.
Right.
No way at all.
Yeah. But it's wonderful to have that sort of like source of their performance to sell the shot. I think that seems to be
I think the reason it worked, I mean, I also thank the artists, the animators working on it, and I think we gave what we could, but I think without them doing it so precisely and convincingly, it would look silly.
Yeah, it's all part of the same chorus. Right. Yeah, exactly. It all has to work together. And I think that's the, I think it's a great thing to point out because that is the source of so many people's problems with CG and say with green screen stuff, right? Is that when you shoot, say, an entire superhero movie on green screen and the actors don't know what scene they're doing really, and everything's going to be sort of cobbled together later in post and we'll figure it out and whatever. Like what you're feeling is that disconnect. Like in that case, you're feeling it in an emotional way because the actors don't really know where they are, and that's coming across in the movie, right? And the physicalization of that is like if you don't have Timothée Chalamet really winding up with his whole body like he's smashing a ping pong ball, there's no amount of visual effects in the world that's going to make it look real. Period.
Right. Exactly. Absolutely. And that's why he's training for it. The fact that he plays the shots correctly, and table tennis is super accurate in terms of like the spin you're putting, and anyone watching it could tell, anyone who plays the game a little bit could tell if it's fake. He had to do it absolutely right. And for Koto, the challenge is that most real players have a really hard time playing without the ball. They're so used to reacting to the actual ball that they don't know how to fake it. And he was able to do it also very accurately. Think of it. You have to imagine it's the same thing as an actor being shot on green screen. Right. Imagine, and some guy with a green screen suit is pretending to be the monster, attacking him, and you have to play that reality. Right. It's I think for actors nowadays, it's become part of the profession to imagine things that are not there. And to go back to what you said about people saying, "Oh, we don't like VFX because it's not real," and of course, we know that there's nothing real in a movie. Like
it's all a trick. That's why you paid the ticket.
If you turn around the camera, you just see all the crew members standing there, and somebody at Crafty Services munching the snacks. But I think what people really mean is that it's not in camera, and I think that's the main difference. It's like sure, the set is fake and it's plywood or whatever, but it's in camera. Right. A real explosion, a special effects explosion is in camera, and now we're talking about things that are not in camera. But that's exactly our challenge. That's exactly what we are working on. It's
it's overcoming that sense of disintegration. Everything has to be a part of the single thing, and I think that's really what impresses me from you talking about stage work and music is because this is so you can't if you're playing music, it's not like one guy's the showstopper and the rest of the band can stink. You're all working together. That's the effect you're going for.
That's for sure. Look, I enjoyed so much working with Jack Fisk, for example.
Production designer extraordinaire, unbelievable. One of the
greats. First of all, he's an amazing production designer, and he's done so much already. But also, his attitude was that very super collaborative. It's not always the case, sometimes there is a disconnect, and especially in a period movie, we had to every time we scouted the place, it had to be some kind of conversation about what is going to be done by production what are VFX going to do exactly? And um, he's done so much, like the production design is doing so much in all these, Lower East Side shots.
Sure.
On that front, sometimes we were surprised. We were planning for more, but he kind of covered everything. He was he wanted everything to be there, built in there. But whenever there was a need to change something, well, of course we did that. And there's some environments that we knew from the beginning that are going to be, we'll have to replace everything, like not everything, but all the background, like they're landing in Haneda Airport, and we shot it in Long Island. We shot it in an airport, but behind it you see all the all the shopping malls and stuff that Long Island stuff that you see there. We had to replace that. Or there is a scene that happens at this car dealership at night where they talk they're in the phone booth, and then they have an argument, and we couldn't find a location for that, and we were already shooting. We're getting to the end of the shooting, and there were schedule issues. So eventually they decided to do it in some parking lot right next to the studio in Long Island where we shot the stage. And there was nothing there, and there was just a big industrial building in front of it. Jack quickly arranged some period cars standing there, put these lights, on hanging lights and a sign. And it was clear that we'll have to do everything behind it. And so that was a collaboration. He took care of the foreground. We created, this whole environment of some kind of semi-industrial New Jersey in the 50s with all the neon signs, even added a few cars passing by behind to give it credibility. But again, it has to be a collaboration. You have to work together, absolutely. Like that band that you mentioned. And I really enjoy working on movies where you kind of get to work together that way.
Well, I mean, it's because Chris and I was talking about, it's like, making movies is like being on a baseball team. You do get up to plate now and again and show off, but mainly it's about getting to first base, getting the job done as a team,
so that everyone else can do their job too.
Because that's what it's really. You're not there as a single. Even when you're talking about directors, with the auteur theory and all this kind of stuff. Wes Anderson is a very unique individual and makes very unique films, but he wouldn't be able to make those unique films without everybody else who is right in line with what he wants to do.
Right.
And they're all doing this together, and that's why it looks like that.
And that's why I think that mostly directors who succeed are the ones that have formed, over the years, they have formed a group of people that they collaborate with, that they know and feel comfortable working with and confident. And this usually proves itself. It's harder if you're just things are being crewed by the studio or being decided on just, prices.
Nobody knows who's good at what yet and all that kind of stuff.
It's hard. It's hard to work like this. And I know that visual effects are sometimes feel like the stepson in all of that.
Yeah, agreed.
But I think a lot less nowadays than when I started as a supervisor, or let's say 10, 15 years ago, where I think in general, people are more, filmmakers are more experienced with visual effects. They are more aware of what's possible, what's not possible. Still, sometimes it's a challenge. Yeah.
Well, I think that it's more of the problem that I think we've seen isn't so much because I agree though, there was more and more directors that are very technically savvy, but studios and producers can be less savvy. They're less up against it, and bad visual effects to me, and you can tell me if I'm wrong on this, but come from not planning things properly at a production level.
And this is where the role of the the role of the VFX producer comes in. And I think that I feel very lucky on this specific movie to be to work with KJ Pillar, who was the producer that worked with me day to day, but also Alan Maris, who was the VFX executive producer. So he was in LA. He wasn't on set or in post every day, but his main role is of course to keep an eye on the budget and also talk to the studio and inform them about the needs and what's going on. And when you have the support from on that side, as a supervisor, it helps you a lot. To just focus on the creative, on the visual, on the technical side, work with the director, focus on what the director wants, and know that there is a support team around you that makes sure also that you don't go over budget, things are feasible. It's super important because directors will always want more, right? They want.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The studio always wants to spend less.
Right.
That's also understandable.
Right.
In between this, there is some kind of reality that you have to work with, and it's naive to think that you don't have to be super aware of the financial sides of visual effects, of course.
I think it's also interesting, speaking of finances, that this is an A24 film, right? And A24 is known for doing very low budget films, generally speaking, that are high art, low budget films. And they're starting to creep up in terms of their budgets to create
becoming
higher,
a mini major now.
bigger, more interesting films while still keeping the A24 brand of quality involved. I'm thinking obviously Civil War was a good example. That was a very expensive film that they made. But this was not necessarily a low budget film, right? I think the reported budget on Marty Supreme was around 70 million, so that's a pretty big budget film, especially for the Safdie, for Josh Safdie, am I right?
Look, I don't know exactly the numbers,
Right.
of course, and I wouldn't, that's what I heard too. And yeah, I would assume that this is not, this is one of their, as far as I know, more expensive movies. But I think that, first of all, period movies are more expensive. To
Sure.
me, because it's everything needs, it's clear. But the VFX budget was not, we had to work with definitely with the limitations, and there were things that we had to change and shuffle from here and there. In the end, it's a bit of a puzzle that you have to work around, because you can put a little bit more on this now that you know what's needed, and take a little bit from that, because when you build the first budget, you are making a lot of assumptions about what is going to be exactly the visual effects, and things, of course, end up being differently, and that depends on what happened on set and also the cut.
Right.
Yep.
So in the end, it's a work like this. But for the crowd, for example, especially at Wembley, we ended up doing a lot more than we anticipated. So part of my job, or part of was to find a way to work with the vendors to lower the cost of the crowd.
Yeah.
So there's all these angles where we could, instead of doing a full CG for every shot, we could create CG elements, render them once, a sort of series of reactions, and have them placed as on cards as a 2D comp, without doing a new CG render, a new animation and layout for each one of those. It depends, you have to be very specific. You can't just make assumptions or kind of try to form an overall procedure.
Right.
In the end, you have to really work smartly. And of course, if you have a higher VFX budget, you have more leeway to go. But
doesn't it make you more creative when you're starting to think of solutions like this? Like, how am I going to pull this off for this budget,
because for
right?
$70 million, that sounds like a lot of money to regular people on the street. But for the scale of this movie visually, and
it's actually
what it's trying to pull, it's actually very low. Because the sort of the world building and depth that it offers is, people don't think about it because it looks closer to real life, but you're actually recreating an entire other past decade in multiple countries, in multiple settings. And it's the effort of putting on a science fiction movie, only nobody gets to congratulate themselves on the spaceships. It's just it's vast.
Right.
And so $70 million is quite a bargain for the effect that you get out of this thing. And I feel like
what was it shot on, by the way?
It was shot mostly on film.
On film.
Yes. That he likes to work with film, and Darius loves to shoot with film.
Okay, sure.
Looks great. Looks incredible.
The dark, some of the interiors, and let's say the Wembley scenes, the very dark ones were shot digitally.
Okay.
And so the challenge here, which was part of the post-production work, was to add grain and make the
Match the
kind
film
of
look.
equalize
Yeah.
the look and make the
Yeah.
digital ones feel, and they do. It's
Absolutely.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it has a really rich texture throughout the entire thing. It's really, really lovely looking. But I think that it's when you brought up the A24 thing, Chris, I'm just like, this movie represents a kind of movie that really doesn't get made very much anymore, because like 70 million may be high for A24, but that's a mid-level for regular.
It's mid-level,
studio.
yeah.
It's
It's
mid-level.
And you don't see many
And
mid-level
studios
films.
do not make those and put those in theaters anymore. Like that's just a very, very rare thing to do. And I think what the visual effects and the sort of the transportative effect of the visuals here, to bring you into this world, like make it possible to both be really unique looking, really beautiful, and very world buildy. Yet the low price tag means that they can make a more personal, weird, experimental film. Like, and they did. Like that's like because when I talk to like my kids, like everyone in the younger bracket like reacted to this movie very strongly. Like this is not a movie for us old folks.
No,
like
it's not.
This is an energetic.
You don't
young
put Tyler
movie
the
that really
Creator in
speaks
a
to that.
movie like this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is a
And I think
great,
that it
I
really-
think it's
yeah.
so, I look at films like this, because I've been hungry. I've been hungry for the next evolution of filmmaking. I'm tired of the same thing over and over again. And movies like this, visually speaking and everything that they do, is a reminder of what's coming to film and what kind of movies are made. So it's really kind of wonderful to see this and make it look so seamless, because I think your role in this film is to make sure that anything that's missing, you fixed.
Yeah, it makes
the
it
ball is
possible.
done, and everything is done. The crowd is there.
Right.
No one's distracted by anything. You are just engrossed in this film completely, to the point I was like, I watched the whole film. I was like, because obviously I went to see the film. I knew we were going to interview you, and it's like, okay, I'm going to see this film. I forgot to pay attention to the visual effects, because it was so perfect.
That's
in the
our
movie.
assignment, and we blew it.
You don't tell me that when you saw that one shot of the Globetrotters in Egypt in front of the pyramid, you thought that we really went.
No, but I forgot.
Man, they really built a pyramid.
But I forgot.
No.
But I forgot that I was watching visual effects. You know what I mean? And that's great. So to me, you've accomplished that, right? You've accomplished where you allow the filmmakers to tell their story and not to be bogged down to see, oh, let me see a dinosaur.
Look,
Yeah.
we exactly. We're there in these kind of movies. We're there to help.
Right.
Yeah.
So and the help sometimes is really, sometimes you almost feel like should I even mention it? Because but why not? Sometimes the things we do are not very spectacular. Right? Like making the pyramids there, that's kind of cool, right? You have to cut out the camels were real and the donkey, but everything behind was a beach at Rye Playland in Connecticut.
Yeah, man.
And of course not in Egypt, or when they're driving through the Holland Tunnel, we shot it on the stage with green screen. But these are things that we know, but there are things that you don't even think of when you shoot a movie, but then they come out, like that scene where they're in the car and they're in at night and they're counting the money, and they're really happy because they managed to do this scam, at the with a ping pong scam. And then they both kind of go out of the car and run besides the car and dance and sing, and the car is moving. So when we shot it, it was so dark outside because it was some country road in New Jersey. That even I remember when we looked at the monitor, we were like, how are we going to know that this is even moving? Because you don't see anything behind them. It's so black. It's like you. And then, of course, at the end, we realized that we'll have to do something there, and we added environments on both sides that move. We kind of tracked what was there, but is invisible because it's too dark. So there's no glory in doing this, but I am still proud of it because we're helping a moment in the movie that for whatever reason did not, needs that little help. And that that kind of help now happens in every single movie and TV show that we're seeing, no matter what style it is and what
So
genre.
if people knew the amount of CG they consume on a daily basis, they would be shocked. They'd be absolutely shocked.
Well, I
Yeah,
think
but I
I think
don't
there
think
is
that-
glory in what you did. I'm sorry, because I think that what you did is essentially
Well-
looking at what you're doing is like, I am there to serve the story. There was part of the story that was missing in the sense that you couldn't understand that they were essentially endangering themselves by running again, next to a moving car. So you had to add that in order to enhance the story, but it's invisible to everyone else. But you feel it, right? You feel it. Without it, it would not have told the same story. So I think it's important.
Yeah.
Man, I love the movie. That's one of my favorite movies of the year, easily. It really made me happy in terms of like, it's doing well. It opened up essentially new audiences with younger people for a really challenging, fun story that would not normally, if this had been done at a lesser level, it would have like been on Netflix for a week and people would have forgotten about it.
I mean, that's the genius of Josh, that he takes this kind of story and this kind of character and makes it into this kind of, it's almost like, in a way, to me, it's almost like the movies used to be in the 30s or 40s, like this real experience that you want to go to theater for. Look, I mean, these are not easy times, not in general for the cinema world, and also specifically for visual effects. We can't ignore it because on one hand, we see this decline in the amount of people that go to watch movies in theaters. On the other hand, even with the streaming services, we're out of that bubble that we had at the end of the pandemic, where I remember, as I was then head of 2D at Fuse, all day long, I was just busy trying to hire people because we had so much work and we just didn't have enough people. And that suddenly all of it switched to a point where nowadays there's a lot of unemployed VFX artists, and
for sure,
it's a different world. And on top of these issues, you add the whole AI, the real stuff, and also the hyped stuff.
Right. There's a lot
pushed
of
along by those
Right.
corporations that are trying to attract more subscribers to whatever services they are. But there's also the real part of it that is becoming substantial in the workflow and changing things.
Yeah, like there's
So-
valid tools that people are like they're hugely useful and will become more useful, and then there's
yes.
lots of noise that is useless and will go away.
Exactly. It's also sort of a bubble. I don't know if financially, maybe also financially, but certainly
Sure.
in terms of the hype, now we have to add AI to everything to make it cooler.
Yeah. Right. Right.
But to make it's not there yet at any stage to make VFX for movies. It's there to help in some of the procedures, but it's not like you can easily create 4K, high dynamic
it's just
range
not at that level.
imagery. We're not there. So the work still needs to be done, but there's certainly some feeling among maybe executives or studios that it can be done cheap, more cheap, basically for less money because of AI.
Right.
Sure.
And there's not enough understanding of what's there, what can be used, what can't be used, what it can do. There is just a lot of talking and hype. And
Well, it's the same thing.
for
I
and
remember
against.
someone was joking with me during the pandemic, right? And there were, because they couldn't shoot anything because of the pandemic, and someone was like, "Can't we just Mandalorian this thing?" Meaning like virtual production. Like, I was like, "Well, no."
What, like Grogu? I wave my hands and
Yeah,
things float.
it's like you can't. No, I mean, yes, you can use virtual production, and it has its uses, but it doesn't mean you just it's a magic bullet that solves everything.
Yeah,
right?
we're not actual wizards,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great example. Because virtual production, this whole idea, it was hyped a lot for a while.
Yep.
And people really thought they could just go and shoot something, not thinking that the background that you're going to project on these LED strings, or you're going to play through these, has to be flawless, because that's going to be in camera.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to fix it later,
It
or
has
you're
to
going
look
spend,
good.
3
I'm
times
sorry,
more
you're
money
not
to
making any
fix it.
sense.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Again, I think that these things, they settle at some point as new tools. Once the people who use them realize what can be done, what can't be done, but it takes time. And now we're with AI like this. And
let
Yeah, it
me
started that
ask you this
process,
in
yeah.
general, as because obviously you've done an incredible amount of work, as I mentioned, on some films that don't necessarily know that there's visual effects. Even let's go back to Boardwalk Empire, etc. But what do you feel in general about the backlash from the studios that are trying to pretend that there's no visual effects and things, or try to say that there's no visual effects when there actually clearly is the use of VFX and things?
Look, when I try to look at it positively, because I cannot say it's not sometimes, emotionally makes me feel bad. So if I try to look at it from a positive point of view, I said, okay, maybe we are just like, CIA agents. Like we do the work,
Right.
but no one should know about what we do.
Right.
And if anyone asks, they'll say, we don't know this guy. He's not,
Right.
But in a way we are like this, but on the other hand, it's visual effects really is just another tool in the tool belt of the filmmaker, just like editing and sound and music and cinematography and color. And to look at it any other way is, I think, just not understanding the reality of filmmaking nowadays.
Yeah.
The fact that studios or whatever try to ride a little bit on that sentiment of like CG, we have to look at it, I think, maybe from the point of view that maybe there's been an overuse of CG in a lot of like these not these big tentpole movies, and maybe not all of it was really well done.
Sure. Right.
Or maybe, let's not say maybe not budgeted well enough or appropriately,
Or
and
never given enough time, possibly.
corners or time, and corners had to be cut, and maybe people got a little tired of it, maybe just like they may have gotten tired of the Avengers in general, just because there was so much of it, because when something succeeds you make more and more of it. Obviously that's natural. So I think there's a little bit of sentiment like this. But I can't say I don't sometimes feel insulted by people going and say, oh, there was no CG used here. Why exactly?
Right.
How is that going to make your movie feel better?
Yeah. And because like I was making the bright choice of arguing with someone online about this, but the guy was just like, that's why I love David Fincher, man. It's just like he uses practical, like as a default, like on Zodiac, all that blood was practical. And I was like, do I tell him I did the blood in Zodiac digitally? Or do I just let it slide? like the thing is that people want to, I think that there's something romantic about practical. Just like there's something romantic about oil painting. Like you can make a movie about an oil painter. I mean, they're just like, staying up and you can imagine what the shots look like, mixing the paint and all this stuff. Making a movie about a guy using Photoshop, it's not quite as romantic. It just isn't. And, and that's just the nature of some kinds of tools. But the thing is, there's a job that needs to get done. And that job is to convince you that you're in this story world. And we're going to do that however we're going to do it, And if we stay focused on what the good choices are there, then the fact that you don't know that we did it is second. Who cares? Like, get the movie out there, sell that story, and make people love it. Then the job is done correctly.
Yeah, I agree. I think, look, it happens again and again with new technologies, but film was always very technology dependent. It's an art form, unlike, say, writing books, right? Or painting, oil painting. You mentioned oil painting. Film was born into a technological world. It was born because of technology, like the development of cameras. And from the very beginning, visual effects were there. Like people tried to make stuff in front of the camera to fool the eye. I mean, you look at the symbol of the VES, it's the moon with the rocket in its eye.
That's right.
That's one of the earliest attempts to create visual effects. It's just, I think there's kind of sometimes there is either a natural reaction. Now you feel it against AI. There's already like this whole reactionary movement of like AI is bad, it's horrible, it's killing. But the reality is, somewhere in the middle. People always use technology in filmmaking. It was never oil painting. So
And the thing is, you can use oil paints to paint a bad painting. You can totally do that. Like, you can do a bad job with this high tech, and you can do a good job with this high tech.
exactly, and you're not going to judge oil painting by the bad oil paintings, and for that matter, I feel bad, especially for all the artists that work their butts off on movies to later hear that somebody bragging about that there was no CGI used in it.
Right.
Why are you neglecting, all this group of people who put so much effort and talent and knowledge?
Right.
It's not. To become a VFX artist is not something you go and, decide to do. It takes many, many, many years of learning and practicing. I think it will go away. I think it may have been a reaction to too much CG or too much not so great CG in front of us for a while, and we just want to go back to how movies were.
Well, I think people wanted to blame crappy movies on CG when it wasn't necessarily the CG that was a problem. It was a crappy movie, right? And so
it's the script. I
and
promise
right
it's
now,
the script.
I think I actually really feel there's a renaissance in filmmaking in the last several years where you actually see good movies being made again, and interesting movies and different stories, and I think Marty Supreme falls right in there. Movies like Sinners is another.
I hope so. I really hope
absolutely,
so.
Absolutely.
Hope so.
I mean, I loved Uncut Gems, and I was like, I know that was a little. Full disclosure, I did not like Good Time, but that's a different.
I make up for that love. That
but
was
he
the
loves
first
it.
Safdie Brothers movie I saw, and I was like, oh
we
my
had
God,
this debate
I'm
all the
bored.
time. Nonetheless, I love Uncut Gems, and I love this movie. I think it was fantastic. But I think there's going to be a renaissance of people that are going to make these interesting films where the discussion whether there was CG or no CG is going to go away because people are just going to love the movie, right? So the success of this film is not because there was or no, it was not CG. The success of this film is because it was a great story, right? And it was like you said, it was an assault on your senses almost, right? Like your sound and music and everything. It was like, you're sitting in the chair like, can I handle all of this?
Well, and to build off that for a second, and Aaron, I'd love your thoughts on this. Is I believe the good aspects of developing new tools, right, is that because directors are becoming more savvy with these kinds of tools and they can engage them more directly, you will be able to get movies in 15 years, something like Marty Supreme won't be $70 million. It'll be $10 million. It'll make these movies even more possible to more people to make them. And the more the price comes down, the more creativity goes up. And so I feel that there's an opportunity, if you want more movies like this, then it's good to get to really understand what we all do, what VFX really are about, how they're used well. You watch something like Marty Supreme and see breakdowns on how this works. As a director, if you're a young director listening to this right now, get to know how this is done, because that's what's going to enable you in the future to tell the stories you want by having an ability with this material, just so you can talk to, say, the VFX supervisor about what you want more clearly.
Absolutely, and that's, by the way, the reason I wrote my first book, the Filmmaker's Guide to Visual Effects, because it's intended specifically to the people you mentioned. And I do think that the new generation of directors are more savvy with visual effects and understand more, the possibilities of using it for their movie, to tell the story and make the movie, not just as a kind of a way to create sci-fi or spectacular things. I think we're way past that point. I think everyone knows it. It's a whole industry. I just, wish that it would be looked upon the same way as editing or sound, and not as some kind of like a stepchild or something you should be embarrassed of because it's not real, or it helped fix problems that other departments couldn't necessarily solve. It's a strange way to look at it if you think of it for a moment. Why?
Absolutely.
If everyone was embarrassed that there were actors in their movie and no one wanted to admit there were actors.
Yeah.
Well, let's
yeah.
real quick. You mentioned your book. You have 2 books that you've written. I want to make sure people know about that. Can you tell us about the other 2 books that you've put out? The other book you put out as well.
There's 2 books. Yeah. There's the Filmmaker's Guide to Visual Effects, which is now in its 2nd edition, and it's they're both by the same publisher, Routledge Focal. And the second one is called The Complete Guide to Photorealism. And by complete, I don't mean that I tell everything you need to. I can't do that. Complete, I mean that it's looking at the concept of photorealism through different, let's say, lenses, through the entire process of visual effects, or it's also for architectural visualizations, or anywhere where photorealism is required. Of course, in visual effects, like we talked about, photorealism is paramount because you are inserting things that need to look like they were in front of the camera. So it's something it's at the core of anything you do in visual effects. But even in other animations and games now, there are certain types of games that are trying to be as photorealistic at all. It's a concept that always interested me because it forces you to understand physics in a way. I'm not a scientist, and definitely not a physicist, but to understand at least the concepts of light and light reflections and surfaces, and how to implement this with those digital tools, how to fake it or simulate it. And so that's the second book, and the second edition is in production, so it should be out around the spring, I think.
Awesome.
No,
okay,
awesome,
well, I'll
man.
Put links into the show notes for that. Can you tell us what you're up to now? I mean, obviously you just finished this show, and it's come out, and it looks great. What's your next big project, or if you can tell us?
Well, I don't know about the next big project, but I've been working lately. I mean, education is always been something, an aspect that I was very much into. I like teaching because it's a way of giving that you do not get from working in a professional world where you get paid for anything you do. It's more of a sharing experience. And I've been teaching at the School of Visual Arts for
nice.
13 years already. So I just finished a course for FX PhD about Comfy UI and Invoke AI. So AI course, but from the perspective of visual effects, where we want to have control over what we generate. We want to be able to be specific. The kind of issues that we're facing with generative AI, where just writing a prompt is not enough, unless you're just happy with whatever it gives you. If you want to be specific about camera angles, or about the look, or about the motion, and all these things. So I created this first course, which I think was, I'm happy to see that it's very well received, and I think there's a lot of interest in it from VFX artists. And I'm currently working on the next one, which I hope will be out soon, and that's just going further with it, mostly into the world of moving pictures or videos with AI. And again, my goal is to try and find, look at ways that you can control things like camera movement. Because it's funny, these AI tools are created, but all these, I assume, mostly young developers. It's really fascinating, the world of Stable Diffusion, which is open source. But you have like these things like a node that help you design camera movements, and they write zoom in, zoom out, and then you use it, and it does a dolly in, dolly out, not a zoom in, zoom out.
Because they don't know what it means.
Pan right is actually track, and you realize that they use these words, but they really want to create a lot of parallax, so they go with the actual moving camera. And it's interesting just to see that, like, how this new area develops. So I'm kind of invested right now in working on this material, and also learning myself, and testing different options, and trying out, and using AI also to help me understand things. And so
Yeah, well, I think that's exactly because the thing with AI is like it does a lot of amazing things out of the box, but like things aren't truly useful until we have control over them.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Like this is the pressure we have to apply on those companies for how to change the tools, and they're not going to be useful fully. They can we can produce elements with them, but we're not going to be as useful as they promise they are until we have those kinds of controls, so we can do the effects we need to do.
Yeah.
It's like we always say, we're not in I'm very pro AI tools, but I'm not in the business of advertising AI. I'm in the business of getting good shots.
Exactly. And so we have to be a little patient. And also that's why I'm interested mostly in the world of Stable Diffusion, because that's an open source world.
Yep.
So that's where things are actually happening by individuals, as opposed to the corporations. They need to make money, so they will sell tools that have the widest audience possible.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
the VFX world is a tiny piece of that audience, so they're not necessarily aiming at it. They're creating stuff that to make everyone want to go and look. I can make a shot. I can just type in things and get it. By itself is amazing that you're giving people the ability to do that. That's the same feeling I got when I started working with you, because I'm not a painter. I could never certainly not create a landscape photo that also feels realistic in any way.
Right.
And suddenly you get this tool, and of course it's great. It has a great appeal, but we have to, our niche, let's say, of VFX, where we have to work for real footage and we have to be accurate with everything, is still not getting enough from the AI world.
Right.
That we can use as much as I would have loved to, or we wished we could. But it will happen.
Yeah.
And then Autodesk will buy the technology, and that will be the end of...
Exactly. Yeah, it's funny how we always say that Autodesk buys something and then that's the end, right?
That's it.
Well, thank you. Listen, Eran, thank you so much for obviously for your time on this, talking about the movie. I'm very excited about Marty Supreme and its success. I'm also really thank you for all the education that you've been doing, things like the books that you've put out, as well as the educating people on what you know about AI, because I think that that's going to be a very important tool for people to grasp the reality of it and not just say the magic of AI, right? I kind of joke, it's like, we're done with seeing how good Will Smith eating spaghetti is. Now we got to get to doing real work, and let's stop with these demos and let's start actually doing some real work with this stuff. So,
yeah, exactly. Well, thank you very much.
No, thank you. Awesome to talk with you, Eran. Thanks so much.